Good evening and welcome back into Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Alex. Lord, Braves spring training. We heard from several notable players, GMs. Alex Anthopoulos, that's going to be where we start today. And I want to start with the GM who defended a lot of his lack of offseason action. Obviously, the Braves had several holes. We talked about them several times on the show. You know them if you've watched this show. You know them if you know the Braves. The pitching staff, the bullpen. You lose A.J. Minter and Joe Jimenez. You lose Max Fried. You lose Charlie Morton. You got to replace those guys, right? Wrong. The Braves have done absolutely nothing to replace those guys. Now, they did address their biggest priority with Jerks and Profar. And when you look at position players, there's really nothing you can complain about. I mean, when Ronald Acuna Jr. comes back, there is about no spot. You can complain about Orlando Arcia.
There's a tomato can out there.
You can complain about it, but the reality of the situation
Everybody's got one bad player.
The Braves were probably not going to be able to replace him. He's there for defensive purposes. He's going to hit ninth. You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay if everything is says, and you understand not addressing that holes when everything is so good offensively for your team outside of Orlando Arcia. But I have a gripe, man, and I have a gripe with the way Alex Anthopoulos is talking about this.
Me
and
too.
this, the guy's a genius. I'm not going to sit here and say I know more than Alex Anthopoulos, but the way that he's defending him, and plus he's on a budget, so some of these things are things that he has to say. Like if he can't go out there and sign a pitcher because Liberty Media won't give him that money, that's not his fault. That's not his fault. So whether it's his fault, whether it's not, we don't really know what's going on behind closed doors, but we do know what this team looks like on paper. And he talked about Holmes replacing Morton and Strider replacing Fried. And yes, frankly, Strider could be better than Max Fried this season. Grant Holmes could be better than Charlie Morton this season. Those things are very, very possible, but the depth of this rotation is dismal. And you are one significant injury from being in scramble mode. And then don't even get me started on the bullpen. I mean, Jesus. What is that? What is that bullpen? It is not good enough to win a championship. And you can address these later in the season, and I'm sure the Braves will, and they'll play it out. But this is not a team. Let me remind you, this is not a guy, he's addressed bullpen, that has made a single noteworthy trade for a starting pitcher at the trade deadline. So this is the starting rotation based on history that we are going to have the entire season. That you better hope guys stay healthy, very, very healthy, or you're going to be pulling a 2020 when we lost Michael Soroka and we're pitching A.J. Minter in the ALCS or NLCS.
I don't know where to begin. I had a lot of issue with it. One, silver lining if you're looking at all of this, and Myles Garrett from Fox 5 has the full response in its entirety. I would suggest go watching that and then forming your own opinion. One thing he did say is the Joe Jimenez loss is the one thing that we haven't really made up for. You talked about Grant Holmes, Charlie Morton, Spencer Strider, Max Fried. That is kind of alluding to that, hey, we still need a high leverage reliever. There's still a deal to be made, which is exciting. Obviously, we like stuff. That's always nice. But what about A.J. Minter? I mean, I thought he was going to say, yeah, the bullpen. It's not just Joe Jimenez. What are you assuming? Dasbell Hernandez is going to be that high level? I think that is crazy. I mean, that's insane. Listen, you're high on him. They're high on him. But this isn't Charlie Morton, who's a back end of the rotation guy where you're expecting Grant Holmes to be that guy. That's not a very tall task. Being a high leverage guy, being Joe Jimenez or A.J. Minter in our bullpen is a very, very tall task. It is a guy. It's the kind of role where you don't just jump into it immediately. It's something you learn to do. It's something that experienced guys generally fill, not Dasbell Hernandez, who could do it. But like I say all the time, hope is not a strategy. And more than anything, I'm spending way too much damn money at the Battery and at Truist for you to say this and that about how rerunning it. That's all we're doing. And that's all we have done. In 2023 and are on paper, 2024 was by far the best roster the Braves have put together. On paper, it was returning that 2023 lineup, which was arguably the greatest of all time, right up there with Murderer's Row. And then you were also had the rotation of Spencer Strider, Max Fried, Charlie Morton, Chris Sale, and Ronaldo Lopez. On paper, that was the best thing we've ever seen. And obviously, injuries took a toll, but regression also hit the lineup hard. I don't understand why just getting back to that point, and I don't even know if we're at that point, in my opinion, in terms of coming into the season from 2023 to 2024 and 2024 to 2025, if these rosters are comparable. So you're basically telling me that you thought like you're just okay running it back, so to speak, or being a little bit worse than last year. That's not going to get it done. Or at least it's shown that, it can't withstand these injuries. And I understand last year was an anomaly, but the years prior to that, injuries are a constant with this Atlanta Braves team, particularly the rotation. But Ozzie Albies has struggled. Ronald Acuna has struggled. Like Michael Harris has struggled. Like these aren't, one-offs last year. That wasn't a one-off. Now, all of them happening at one time, that's a one-off. But like, just to act like everything, you're not going to hit a 12-leg parlay where everybody regresses positively, everybody stays healthy, and all the guys you expect to step up. That's not all going to happen. You have to give yourself some leeway, so to speak, where things go wrong.
Yeah.
His response was really off-putting to me.
I just think it's a slap in the face to the fan base.
We're top 10 in payroll. We need to be better than that. We should be better than that.
Well, yeah, we were number 4 in payroll last year. I mean, and you say, and also you told us payroll is increasing. So Anthopoulos, if payroll is increasing, well, why hasn't it increased? I mean, if it's increasing based off where we were at last year, we have tons of money to spend. And I'm not sitting here saying go sign some guy that you could regret for 4 years on $125 million, some starting pitcher. Like, I understand the starting pitcher market was a little bit crazy, but there were deals out there for 1 year guys. Maybe you actually break your rule and give something an option. I don't know. There were deals out there that could be made to add insurance. Hell, Charlie Morton was out there for 1 year and $15 million just to add a little bit of depth and insurance, because as you mentioned, injuries have been a problem. Injuries happen to every single pitching staff. Injury happens to Chris Sale this year, and you're saying, AJ Smith-Shawver, we need you to go out there, or Ian Anderson, we need you to go out there and be a guy for this team. That's not a good thing. That is not a good thing. And you can say Charlie Morton, you don't really like that, but I like it a little bit more when you have more options and when you have the money to spend. Why aren't you spending it? Why aren't you spending it? And relievers, I mean, they're a dime a dozen. You can go get Kirby Yates for $113. 1 year's $13 million. You can go get all these guys for 1 year, $10 million. AJ Minter for 2 years, 20. These aren't like massive investments, and they might not be the best deals ever, but at a certain point you got to make a deal just to avoid not having a crappy bullpen. And maybe this thing comes to fruition later in the offseason. We can all laugh about it. But right now, a month away from the start of the season, I'm sitting here and I'm like, why the hell does our bullpen feature a bunch of guys that have never pitched in high leverage? I mean, just imagine. And listen, we're talking hypotheticals here because depth is a legitimate concern and you have the money to fill in depth pieces. I'm not asking you to go get a star player. I'm asking you to alleviate the depth concerns that are very apparent with this roster. Imagine if Rafael Iglesias goes down for a second amount of time. What are you going to do? Is Dosbel Hernandez now your closer? I mean, these are things that I'm not just thinking. Like Alex Anthopoulos is evaluating, and you have this money. We know they have money based on what Anthopoulos has said. We're not even at the luxury tax. Like, why are we not going out there and spending it just to alleviate the obvious depth concerns? Like, that's all we're asking. I'm not sitting here saying we should have re-signed Max Fried. I mean, it would have been nice, but I'm not saying that's what you had to do. I'm just saying there's obvious depth concerns here. They don't cost an arm and a leg to fill, and they're not being filled.
We're talking about a Rule 5 draft guy who has the potential to make the opening day roster. Not only make the opening day roster, but potentially pitch some serious innings for us. That's not what World Series contenders do. That's not what they do whatsoever. And baseball's a long season. A lot can change, obviously. Diamonds in the rough is kind of Alex Anthopoulos' specialty, so you got to give him the benefit of the doubt to a certain extent. We haven't won a World Series. We're getting far enough away from that World Series where we have to start looking inwards and changing things because it's obviously not working. And while we can still kind of blame the injuries for last year, at a certain point, you have to stop making excuses and overcome those injuries. I mean, because it's a constant. If there's been one constant, hell, the injuries were constant in the World Series, and you overcame them. I just think that it's how he was talking about it just made me feel as a fan like, I don't want to support you. I spend way too much damn money at that stadium and at the Battery for you to say something along the lines of, we're spending money. We're top 10 in payroll. Yeah, you are top 10 in payroll. You were top 5 last year, though. That's a huge difference.
Yeah, and that's where I goes to how much is this Alex Anthopoulos' fault? How much is this a Liberty?
Well, then honestly, though, who is he defending? What does he,
Well, there's 0% chance he's ever going to go out there and leave Liberty Media.
I wouldn't say
those are his bosses.
No, I understand what you're saying to that point, but I'm not like at this point in the offseason. Maybe at the beginning where you want to, you don't want to reveal your cards. You don't want to show how much money you have because that puts you in a disadvantage. But like at a certain point, it's like, yeah, we're done for the offseason. It's just like, we're at the point in payroll that's what we are. And that's it.
I can trade up, tell you, even if that was the case, there's a direct message from Liberty Media, Terry McGurk, to make sure nobody knows that is the case. That's just how this entire operation works.
Because they're a public company.
And, that would be a slap in the face. I mean, listen, like I said, it is a slap in the face.
It is a slap in the face.
I know. And
it just feels like it even without them saying anything.
Yeah, I know. Well, listen, your actions are going to speak whether your words say the truth or not. And if your actions are, you don't want to go into this luxury tax payroll to avoid certain penalties and stuff like that.
Resetting the tax is one of the bigger slaps in the face that any organization, because we can win a World Series. We can win a World Series. We should be leaving no stone unturned
in the middle.
And for you to just go out and deliberately reset the tax, whatever the reason, is a slap in the face to the fan base.
Yeah, in the middle of a championship window. But I mean, listen, it's hard to know everything that they are balancing. I mean, you talk about Ronald Acuna, Ozzie Albies, all these contracts for big players you might want to extend it and are going to be much more expensive in the future. I don't know everything that they're balancing. And I will say, you talk about Alex Anthopoulos receiving the benefit of the doubt. There's no doubt that it would not shock me at all, even if you complain about some of the names that you're hearing going into spring training and being like, oh, that guy was a Rule 5 drafty. Angel Perdomo has a 5.55 ERA. What the hell is this guy going to do? Well, guess what?
New high leverage guy.
Yeah, I mean, time and time again, so listen, I'm always going to give Alex Anthopoulos the benefit of the doubt, but I will agree with you. As you mentioned, World Series is moving further and further away. You talk about teams overcoming injuries. Just look at the Dodgers, Glasnow, all those guys were out come the postseason. What do? They go and get a bunch of acquisitions at the trade deadline. It is kind of funny how the teams that genuinely are the most aggressive at the trade deadline, think 2023 Rangers, think 2024 Dodgers, think 2021 Braves, like end up on top. And maybe that's the plan this season. I mean, you got to think if they don't spend now, they're going to have plenty of money to spend at the trade deadline. So we'll see. It's a long season. Everything has to pan out. But I do agree. I mean, there is somewhat of a hint, despite what they said earlier, that those luxury tax threshold penalties are playing a factor in the decisions. That's the surging. But we do have some positive updates on the Braves. We're going to discuss those after the break.